Hey guys, so in today's video, I'm going to be taking you through a deep dive into my warm-up. The warm-up for me is one of the most important parts of any good program, and in today's episode I'm going to explain to you why. One of the reasons we all train is to move better, to perform better, to look better. And the only way that we can really achieve that is if we manage the way we move. We don't accumulate and pick up niggles, restrictions, and/or injuries, and that we can maintain the consistency of getting better each and every day. One of my biggest pet hates in the fitness industry is coaches because most coaches will preach the importance of a warm-up, and yet when you watch them in sessions, they leave their clients to do the warm-up and don't coach it while they're setting up the squat, the deadlift, the bench press, etc. Every movement and every exercise that is in our program needs to have a reason why. I'm not personally not a huge fan of work for the sake of work. There needs to be a reason why I'm doing something. And for me, the warm-up, I don't even like the term warm-up if I'm being completely honest. I think it's just the beginning of the workout. And what should happen is we should start on the floor because that is the most unloaded position we can place our body. We go through a series of movements that get our joints and body feeling optimal so that we can put load on the body, run it, do whatever we need to perform optimally. I honestly believe that if all you did was the warm-up I'm about to show you now, and you didn't do any other training on top of it, you would actually get better. Because the warm-up is not just a series of stretches and stuff like that. We're trying to target each and every joint so that it's a daily check-in. So if I perform this warm-up every single day, and what that does is that now gives me feedback. So how do I feel today compared to yesterday, compared to the day before? And that allows me to become in tune with my body. Am I feeling fatigued? Am I feeling tight? Am I feeling a bit run down? You know, and that allows me to adjust my training based on how I'm feeling. That is a big component to longevity in training. Having that connection and being able to listen to our body and know how we're feeling and know what our body needs. And that comes through trial and error. You're not going to get that day one, but I think the constant practice of checking in with your body on a day-to-day basis gives you information and data to be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. Oh, this is last time I felt like this. I was fatigued, and now I can learn from that. There's a bit of a disclaimer before we get into this video. I'm not married to any of these exercises, so feel free as you're watching this to put in ones that you might like. You know, I might change this in a month's time when I find a different exercise that hits something different. But the series of movements that I go through target ankle, hip, knee, low back, upper back, shoulders, chest. You know, so all of these things, it's a systematic approach to just touching every joint and making sure that we're going through good ranges of motion. Now, I also believe that a good warm-up should have activation and work, low intensive work for our weak areas. So that is the posterior chain for me, our hips and our shoulders. We want to make sure we warm up fully, but also get a good amount of volume in, right? So you'll see when I go through the three-way hip and the IYTWs, I'm doing sort of 40 to 60 reps every time I do this warm-up. Now, over the course of a week, a month, a year, I'm accumulating good amount of volume that not only is going to build a little bit of hypertrophy, you know, in terms of just continual activation, but also develop that mind-muscle connection of knowing how to move your limbs. Because if you go through this warm-up, and I encourage you to, you'll find that there are certain movements that like, wow, that's really alien to me. I've never done that before. A prime one is scap push-ups. You know, people struggle to move their shoulder blades without extending their spine and sagging their spine. And these things carry over to our big lifts. So this is the foundation and fundamentals of good human movement that you just want to never neglect and never allow yourself to get rusty at. You know, when it comes to the lunge patterns that we do, focusing on that single leg stability. A lot of training in the gym doesn't really expose us to too much single leg stability, and balance, much like anything else, is a skill. You'll get better at it the more you practice it. And the thing is, the key things here is longevity. A lot of the things that you're going to see in this warm-up is about making us structurally sound. And I believe, like I sort of said, is that if all you did was this warm-up, you would actually get better. So if you did this warm-up every day, you would move better, you'd feel better, your core would be stiffer, your glutes and shoulders would be more stable, and that is only a net positive to take you into your training session. So I'm going to voice over the actual warm-up, and then I'll check in with you at the end, guys. Right, guys, so whether or not you love the foam roller or not, I'm indifferent to it. But for me, a foam roller and some soft tissue work at the beginning of every session is another tool to get a little bit of feedback as to how your tissue is feeling. Where are you tight? Is there abnormal tension in your calf, your Achilles, your IT band due to a run that you did yesterday? And I just find that by going through some soft tissue work and checking in with yourself, not only can you alleviate some of the discomfort and some of the restrictions that are there before we go into the warm-up, but you also again touch on that feedback and just seeing how your body's responding to the exercise, right? Because we're always trying to balance fatigue and performance, intensity and fatigue, right? We want to be able to push ourselves as hard as we can, but only as hard as we can recover from. So if you're waking up in the morning and you're incredibly sore and it really hurts to be on the foam roller, you know you might have overcooked yourself the day before, and you're going to have to sort of take it a little bit, be a little bit cautious in today's session. So for me, I like to check in with the foam roller. I just sort of work through all the major muscle groups. I mean, I've dislocated my shoulder 3 or 4 times, so I know I've got restrictions in my lats and in my shoulders, and I just feel the benefit of doing a bit of soft tissue work beforehand. If you don't feel the benefit and you don't feel the need, then by all means skip. Like I say, I'm neither for nor against anything that's in this. I just do what feels good for me, and I encourage you to experiment and try out and see what feels good for you. And if you don't feel that the foam roller carries any benefit at all, then don't do it, right? So like I say, don't take my word for it. Just go through and experiment for yourself to get the most out of your training, right? Because it's all about wiping the slate clean in the warm-up so we can move well, move efficiently, and perform optimally. That's ultimately the goal. Okay, so from there, we're gonna go into our mobility routine, okay? So this is a full body one. I always start with the cat camel. So the cat camels are, so when you're on your hands and knees, you're in the most unloaded position that you can place your spine. And this is a great way just to check in with movement. So for the cat camels, they are not a stretch, they are a motion. What we're trying to do is decompress the spine and develop some coordination and some dexterity of movement as to how we move through our spine, working from top to tail. So I always start on the hands and drop to the elbows. The elbow version, and also relax the feet down to the floor, accentuate the low back movement a little bit. So I'm starting on my hands and knees and then progressing to my elbows. From here, I go into an adductor stretch, so I get as big a stretch as possible. I extend my tailbone, so I've got a nice natural curvature of the spine, and then I go through upper back rotations. It's important to make sure that you keep the sole of your, in this instance, my left foot, on the floor, because that gets a little bit of ankle mobility as well. We do both sides. Now what you'll see from this front angle is that my left knee, in this situation, is still far away from my belly button, okay? We're trying to not anchor over the belly button with that kneeling leg, but actually get a good stretch on both sides of the hip. Now your range of motion is going to be your range of motion. Don't compare yourself to me. Take yourself to your end range and then go through the upper back rotations. From here, we're going to go into a pigeon stretch. Again, just getting those hips opened up and stretching out the glutes. I think this is a really important one. We spend a lot of time sitting down. These muscles become shortened. You know, they are, like, the glutes are the most powerful and the hips are the most powerful group of muscles in the body. We need to make sure that they're moving well if we want them to be able to perform well. Okay, so from here we then go on to the back. We've got hamstring kicks. So the key thing here is I always try and keep the opposing leg, trying to get the back of the knee to the floor. So that leg's extended. I'm lightly gripping my right thigh and then just showing the sole of the foot to the ceiling, right? I'm looking to encourage length, not force it. So with all of these movements, I'm not grinding end range of motion. And over the practice of doing this on a day-to-day basis, in 2 weeks, in 2 months, you're gonna be way better than you were. From there, we go into the iron cross. Again, trying to get that foot to the opposite hand. What we get here is a little bit of thoracic rotation, a little bit of glute and IT band sort of stretch, and just getting some rhythm and timing through this movement. Again, some of these movements will feel clunky if they're the first time you've done them. They will become more efficient as you do them more regularly. From there, we do the opposing movement. So this is called a scorpion. So this one can be quite challenging for people, but again, you're trying to get the foot to the opposite hand. This will open up the front side of the body while still working through your thoracic spine a little bit, but you'll also tap into hip flexors as well as building that sort of rhythm, timing, elasticity of the movement. Okay, then from here we come into a mountain climber with a rotation. So a mountain climber stretch, we bring the right foot up so the knuckles of the toe are in line with the wrist. We are pushing forward to get a good stretch for the hip. I don't rest the left knee on the floor. Then I'm taking my right elbow towards the floor. You may or may not get it to the floor, and then open up and try and touch the ceiling. I do 5 reps on each side here. Again, this is hip, upper back, shoulders, chest, really just getting a body moving globally. And then do the same on the other side. Drive forward, sit into it, get a good stretch through the hips, both front and back, and then rotate down into the hip, and then open up and rotate through that thoracic spine. And then from here, we are going to go into some scat push-ups. So I mentioned this in the first bit, right? So the whole person here is a tall plank hold. I squeeze the shoulder blades together and then I drive the shoulder blades apart. Arms stay locked out straight. You're going to want to bend the elbow on this, but having a good range of motion and good function of the scapula is only going to help your pressing and pulling movements, okay? So it's really important that we nail these movements. These are skills. We need to get better at them. From here, we go through our first bit of activation. This is the IYTW. Arms as long as you possibly can. The key thing here is to make sure that we're not flapping through the spine and lifting our chest. We need to make sure that we brace the abs and that we're moving through the shoulder girdle and the shoulder blades so that we're getting all the activation of the muscles. So this is the I position, 15 reps. Into the Y position for 15 reps. And again, with the number of reps, you can build this up. I'll sometimes do 20, 30 reps, but it's the drip by drip approach to just getting the muscles firing in many different positions, right? We want to have complete control of our body and where it is in space. Again, keep the neck nice and relaxed when you do this. Don't force the head into the floor. And then we've gone into the W's here. Now, there are many variations of this you can do. I mean, I sometimes substitute this for a band pull-apart series. Anything that just gets a good amount of work through the shoulder blades and the shoulder girdle is going to be good here. Now we're going into the 3-way hip. So this is essentially the IYTW for the hips. Roll your weight forward and place it on your top hand, making sure that you keep the toe turned down towards the floor and that you're lifting with the glute on that top leg. Leg stays locked out straight on these, okay? So I'll generally do 10 reps of these straight leg raises before going into forward circles. Again, trying to make sure that we have good control of the limb. Okay, what most people will find is that they turn into squircles. They're sort of squares, circle-y kind of movements. What you realize is you don't have as much control of your limbs as you might have thought you would. And then we go into 10 backward circles. So by the end of this, your glutes should be singing at you a little bit. You should know exactly where they are. And all the musculature in that hip is getting nice and warmed up. We roll over, we do the same on the other side. So again, keep that weight on that top hand, turn the toe down towards the floor. We lead with the heel, lifting through the hip. Again, squeezing that glute at the top of the movement. You'll feel the hips working. You won't need to try too hard here. 10 reps, and then we're going to go into the forward circles before transitioning into the backward circles for the last time. Again, you want to start that circle at around sort of 10 inches above your bottom foot, so the hip is active throughout the entire range. 10 forward circles, and then we'll go into 10 backward circles. Okay, so following on from the 3-way hip, we're going to go into our abdominal series. Okay, so from here, this is stability focused. We're going to go reaching plank. So feet want to be slightly wider than hips, and we're just reaching out to a light finger touch at arm's length without allowing your hips to rotate side to side. Again, it's that vision of trying to think that you've got a glass of water on your low back. Keep it nice and strong, nice and stable. Feet come together. We're now going into a knee tuck plank. Again, keep the hips low. Don't allow the hips to ride up. Keep the load on the abdominals. Again, you're going to get a little bit of hip work with this as well, but it's the loss of contact and that increase in stability that happens when we remove a point of contact. And then from there, I go into leg lowers. So I'm going to show you both variations. You can do alternate leg lowers, which are the easier option. Again, making sure that there is no extension through the lower back when you do either variation of this, okay? We're trying to keep the abdominals engaged, which locks our spine into position, and then we're just adding the load by lowering the leg. This is the more advanced variation, a double leg version. Now I will generally do 3 rounds of this with no rest. I'm only going to show you 1 round. But again, what this will lead to is an increase in core stability, which only leads with a greater force translation to running, jumping, lifting, etc. And then from there, we go into our strict lunge series. So this is primarily starting to link everything together, okay? We've switched on all the muscles on the ground, we've got our body moving well. Now let's transition that into a strict walking lunge. The goal here is at the top of each rep, you should be as tall as you can. You wanna lock that leg out. You're going into the forward lunge, we then go into the reverse lunge, which are a bit more tricky. So it's learning how to control your force, okay? So don't over push, don't under push. Spoken about these before. And then we're going to go into the lateral variation. We drive up, come down, absorb that landing, and then push off. So it's all about learning how to control our body weight through space, okay? Because that's really important. Then we switch over, do the other side. Again, I'm doing 5 on each side here, guys. You can do 10. It doesn't really make a difference. The goal here is consistency. 5 each side, 10 each side. Just do it every day, and you won't be able to avoid getting better at it, because you get good at what you practice, and it's all about having good daily practices. And then from here, we're going to go into our single leg hip hinge. So a walking single leg hip hinge, similar position to that walking lunge, reverse lunge. We drive up, we take a step, we drive the knee up, we hinge through that hip, keeping that back nice and straight. Again, control the movement. Okay, not rounding the back, not collapsing through the spine. Just keep everything nice and engaged, moving at the joints we want to move at. Again, you might be a bit wobbly to begin with. That's part of it, okay? And then from there, I normally like to go add a little bit of dynamic sort of general movement. So I go high knees, butt kicks, side strides, and then I'll get into my specific warm-up for whatever I'm doing that day. So nice and light and fast, just encouraging some dynamic movement. Again, don't have to force this, nothing too aggressive. Walk back recoveries. Again, we're just looking now to expose the tissue and the body to something a bit quicker and a bit more dynamic. If you were going into a running session or a sprint session, you might do your running drills after this. If you're going into your lifting, you might get the bar on your back and do your specific warm-up for the squat, the deadlift, whatever you're doing for that day. But this is the nucleus and the very foundations of my warm-up. And then just going through some lateral side shuffles here to cap it off. So there you have it, guys. That there is the sort of nucleus and the foundations of my warm-up, okay? So there are certainly times where I will take movements out if a client feels some discomfort and feels some pain. And there'll be times where I add some movements in if someone has a certain injury that we're trying to rehab. This is the time to just install good habits, okay? And I would get you to experiment, explore, add new movements in, subtract movements. Again, you're trying to find what is uniquely your own. Bruce Lee had a famous quote that sort of went, you know, absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and then add uniquely what is your own. Again, go through this warm-up, find what you find beneficial, throw away what you don't, and then you are left with something that is uniquely your own. And that is ultimately what we're always trying to find, okay? Don't take my word as gospel, don't take anyone's word as gospel. It's all about experimentation. So playing around with certain movements, playing around with a way of doing things, see how the body feels from doing this warm-up, how it feels going into your session, your runs. Personally, I think this feels great, and the feedback I've had over sort of probably about 6-7 years of doing this warm-up now with clients is that generally speaking, they feel better for doing it. And it's just familiarity, okay? What I like about having the same routine over and over again is that I don't have to think about it. The first time you do this warm-up it might take you 20 minutes because you're gonna be looking at your phone going, what have I got to do now? What's that movement? What's this? Eventually it becomes second nature. And that's ultimately what we wanna get to, right? That's forming a habit. Build good, strong habits, and that leads to success, guys. So hopefully you found this useful. Again, if you have any questions, I know this video is not sexy, it's not gonna set the world on fire, but I do think that for me, in the way I program, the warm-up is a hugely overlooked component of training for most people. They're missing out on a valuable opportunity to refine movement skills, to develop some weak links, and to build some capacity and some strength in areas that training might not always account for. But if you have any questions and you want to know a little bit more, then feel free to reach out, ask any questions in the comments, do all the jazz like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.